For the second time that week, the captain ventured out onto the Gulf waters before dawn. His small fishing vessel had been left adrift after a breakdown earlier in the week, about 20 miles off Johns Pass on Florida's Gulf Coast. Determined to save his boat before the approaching storm hit, he departed under the stars at around 3 a.m. on Wednesday to attempt repairs. The world was quiet at that hour. A warm, salty breeze brushed over the dark swells. The moon hung low, casting a rippling silver path on the gentle waves. In the distance, faint flashes of lightning hinted at a brewing tempest, but the eastern horizon behind him was still calm.
By first light, he reached his drifting boat. It bobbed listlessly on the swells, a lonely silhouette against the blue-gray dawn. He climbed aboard, feeling the reassuring solidity of the deck beneath his feet. With careful hands, he set to work fixing the mechanical issues that had left the boat stranded days before. Bolts were tightened, lines untangled, and the engine coughed back to life. For a moment, hope glimmered. If he could just tow or pilot the boat back to port ahead of the weather, all would be well.
As morning turned to midday, the Gulf began to change. The air grew heavy and thick with humidity. The gentle breeze stiffened into gusts. Dark clouds gathered on the western horizon, inching closer. He knew Hurricane Milton was on its way, a Category 3 storm churning toward Florida's west coast. But he had hoped to be safely in harbor by the time it arrived. Now, with each passing hour, Milton's outer bands crept nearer, turning the sky a bruised green-gray over the open water. The captain turned his bow toward land, urging the boat homeward. Suddenly, a harsh shudder ran through the hull. The wheel jammed in his hands. The boat veered, then lost steering entirely. Heart pounding, he scrambled to diagnose the problem. Peering over the stern, he saw the issue. A stray line had fouled the rudder, wrapped tight and rendering it useless. He tried to dislodge it with a boat hook, but the line was stubborn, and the seas were growing rougher by the minute. He grabbed his radio and, through static, managed to hail the Coast Guard. The reply came quickly, crackling over the airways with urgent clarity. They had his position and understood his situation. Weather conditions were deteriorating rapidly, the voice warned. The Coast Guard instructed him to put on his life jacket and stay with the boat's emergency beacon. Rain started to fall in stinging needles as the outer bands of Milton reached his position. Over the radio, the Coast Guard reassured him that help would come when it was safe. But by now, even their voices sounded distant. He was on his own until the storm passed. By late afternoon, communications were lost, the last radio contact cutting off around 6:45 p.m. One massive wave struck. The deck lifted beneath him, tilted hard, and vanished. In one crushing instant, he was flung into the sea. Flailing and gasping, he broke the surface. Debris bobbed around him. He grabbed the first thing that floated close, a large plastic cooler. It was slippery and half open, but it floated. He clung to it like a life raft. The storm raged on. The storm was no longer just weather. It was sound and pressure and force. It was black water smashing sky. Rain became knives, wind became fists, and in the middle of it, a man clung to a cooler. Each breath felt borrowed, each moment a question. He tried to hold thoughts together, but they scattered like leaves in the wind. Pain blinked through his limbs, cold sharpened in his spine. He shouted once. The wind swallowed it whole. He focused on what was real. The plastic lid under his chest, the beacon's cord still tied to him, his hands locked in place like anchors.
Time collapsed. Night grew long. He remembered birthdays. The smell of sawdust in his father's garage. Hot dogs on the 4th of July. He saw his daughter's hands coloring stars on paper. He heard the dog's tags jingling by the back door. The brain plays tricks in the dark, but the heart knows what matters.
He couldn't feel his legs anymore. His fingers ached to loosen, but every time he drifted too far into memory, the cooler would shift beneath him, and he would jolt to wake again. He whispered their names, one by one, like rosary beads in his mouth.
Then a blink, faint, sharp. He turned his head. The beacon, still pulsing. Here I am. Here I am. It was the only thing making sense. A firefly in a hurricane. He smiled just barely. That little light hadn't given up. Neither would he.
The edge of the sky began to change. Not fast, not bright, but enough. Black became navy. Navy became gray. The sea eased. The wind fell. The rain slowed to drizzle. He opened cracked eyes. Somewhere above, morning waited. He was still here, still floating, still alive. Dawn washed over the gulf like breath after sobs. The clouds had broken. Sunlight touched the waves like apology. He lay draped over the cooler like driftwood. His mind was slow, but he knew the worst had passed, and he was not dead, not yet. He shifted. Pain bloomed like firecrackers in his muscles. He grimaced and blinked. He tried to speak, but his throat was raw. Salt and silence had taken his voice. So he listened to the stillness, to the faint lap of the sea. Waiting now was the only thing left to do. He looked at the sky. Endless, empty. Then a dot, small, uncertain. He blinked. It was still there. Movement. A helicopter. The rotor beat grew louder. Real now. Close. He waved. Once. Then again. Awkward. Shaky. Please, he thought. Please see me. The bird tilted. Hovered. They saw him. A sheep fell from the sky. Red suit. Masked face. A swimmer. Calm. Focused. He swam close. The rotor beat grew louder. Real now. Close. He waved. Once. Then again. Awkward. Shaky. Please, he thought. Please see me. The bird tilted. Hovered. They saw him. Reached out. You're all right. We've got you. And just like that, he wasn't alone anymore. The sling tightened. He rose from the water, limbs dangling. The wind rushed past. Below, the cooler drifted, a silent goodbye. Inside the helicopter, hands pulled him close, wrapped him in warmth, offered water. He closed his eyes and wept.
The world grew louder, not the sea or the wind, but voices, human voices. Inside the helicopter, someone spoke softly. "Hang in there, sir." He blinked, nodded, managed to whisper, "Thank you." The smell of fuel and canvas filled the cabin. The warmth of the blanket soaked into his bones. His breath slowed.
They flew low over the Gulf. He looked down. Waves still rolled, but they no longer seemed cruel. Somewhere below, that cooler still drifted. His hands twitched, missing its shape. He wondered how long it would float, how many others it might carry someday.
Back on shore, an ambulance waited. A team of strangers moved like old friends. They wrapped him again, checked vitals, spoke to him gently. No cameras, no noise, just care.
Later, he sat in a hospital bed. A nurse brought soup. He took a sip, closed his eyes, let the heat fill him from the inside out. He didn't need to speak. Not yet. The world could wait.
That night, he saw his daughter. She held his hand without a word. Her eyes were red. So were his. She leaned into him. He kissed her hair. No story needed telling. She already knew.
Weeks passed. The boat was never found, but the beacon washed ashore. He kept it on a shelf, still blinking, if only faintly. Some days he would hold it, close his eyes, and listen to the silence it once broke. He doesn't fish much anymore, but sometimes he walks the shoreline, not looking for anything, just remembering how it felt to be held by water, to be lost, and to be found.
This was the Last Campfire. Until next time, keep your light up.